Hi everybody, Alan, say hello.
Hello.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We've got people live in person and on YouTube, so we'll kick off any questions. And for people listening online too, we'll repeat any questions and we'll have someone else reading out the questions as well for those that are online, because obviously we can't see from over here. So has anyone got any questions on the floor to sort of start and begin with?
I just first say, actually,
Okay.
Thank you for creating this, because this is the first time you've done this, and it means a lot for me, from the foundation and the people from our community. I think everyone just wants to say a big thank you to you, because it's amazing what you've done, and yeah, I'm getting emotional. I mean, when I listen to this, it's, as I said last night, I listened to the game last night, and it's brilliant. It's so special. So
thank you so much. Thank you for all the support and all the shares that have happened. People watching online today. I know there are people all over the country and around the world that are tuning in. So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any question on the documentary or the foundation, the future of the foundation, any challenges of the documentary. We're completely open to anything at all. Go on, Tim.
Firstly, well done on the documentary. Really enjoyed it. Fascinating glimpse back. I suppose there was a few things that came out of it. One, the Scandinavian connection. Did you discover what took Frank to Scandinavia? How long he stayed there? You know, why he came back, and then what happened in those intervening times when he came back? Realising it's difficult to unpick it all, but it's quite intriguing he went there.
You can't. I was going to say just quickly. So the question was about Scandinavia and why did Frank go to Scandinavia, and then what happened about him coming back?
I think there's still a lot of research we don't know about. There's still a lot of gaps in our knowledge of when he was there and what he did there, because back then it was all very amateur. The football there was very amateur, so they didn't really log all this information, and I think it's just very hard for myself and for other people doing the research, because we don't speak Swedish or know any of the Norwegian, so there's probably a load of material still out there which we don't know about yet. Why he went there, I think over the years, for me, finding out more about him, I felt maybe he was trying to get away from something, getting away from someone or something, or maybe finding somewhere where he had an easier way into football, into coaching, because possibly, I mean, I don't know. We don't have first time. We haven't asked him personally in the sense that why'd you go, but I think there probably was more opportunities for him over there as opposed to over here, where I think even nowadays I feel coaches from a ethnic background might have more problems getting into football. So I mean, there's problems now. I can't imagine how it was back then.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that must.
Yeah, he was very unique. When we spoke to Hassa and the people out in Sweden, he was actually one of the only Chinese people that they knew. So I really like Susan said, in England in the same way, it was sort of a bit of a novelty. People couldn't really believe that there was someone that was involved in football from a different background. And I think we really noticed as well, speaking to people in Sweden and the few people that did know him and know of him, that certainly his time in Scandinavia and then in Europe generally, it might not have been as cheery as we think. Like we said in the documentary, here it was very positive, and something changed. And whatever that reason was, the truth is we probably won't ever have reasons because of the time period and the fact that articles and archive has been lost, and first-hand accounts don't exist anymore. So that's a real challenge. And so actually you have to try and piece a huge jigsaw together with very, very few pieces, and that's quite hard to do. So
I think there is, around that sort of time, on the personal side for him, he did lose his wife at that sort of time, so maybe that comes into it. So we haven't really gone into depth into that, because I don't know if that's the place that we should be going into, but I mean, I think that maybe helps answer that question in some way.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah, just a follow-up question on the back of that. You mentioned Susan, and she mentioned the fact that Frank was perhaps perceived to be something of novelty. Do you think if Frank Sue was playing today, would he still be perceived as a novelty?
Oh, do you repeat that?
Yeah, so of course, sorry, we're on a roll. The question was about Frank Sue, and if he was playing today in the 21st century, would he still be a novelty like he was last century?
I think there's more acceptance now that football's such an international sport, so it wouldn't be a novelty in the sense that I've never seen a Chinese person before. But then I think there is a part of it where it is sort of, even though in my experience there has been other people from East and Southeast Asian backgrounds playing football, it's not prominent now. You don't really see that nowadays. So yeah, I guess there will be that sort of tag of novelty in a sense. But then football's so international now that you wouldn't think, oh, someone from a different country coming in here playing is something that different. So
I think something that we discussed a lot while making the documentary in that process was actually the influence that Frank would have had if the media had existed. And I think the difference in opinion and the difference in, say, popularity of East and Southeast Asian players in sport now would be a completely different story. And I think that had a massive impact, him playing at the time that it did. And sadly, actually a very negative impact, because actually looking 50 years back, there was only newspapers. And unfortunately, like we found in research, and even in Scandinavia too, with some of the people that we spoke to, lots of it was negative and lots of it wasn't deemed in a positive light. And I think actually that if he was playing now, he would be a trailblazer. And actually, but hopefully through this documentary and through things that Alan's doing through the foundation and the work that other people are doing, that trailblazers for ethnic minorities in sports can really come to life and really start to take to make a change, to take a stance. I think it's so important. Yeah, thank you.
Just one more question, if you don't mind. Just quick, again, something that Susan Gardner said. I think she said that she was optimistic that Frank would have got called up to play for England, and you know, had there been a war, had there not been a war. What do you both think about that? Because Jack Leslie in 1925 was called up for the England squad, but then that call up was withdrawn, and that wasn't that many years earlier. So, do you feel a lot had changed? Do you agree with Susan? What's your take?
Go on, you can go first. Yeah, so we're going to say the question was if the war hadn't broke out, would Frank have been called up to England? And our personal opinions on the matter.
I think you bring up Jack Leslie, and that was about 10 years previous. And then you add on the next person of colour to be called up for England was Viv Anderson in the 70s. It's quite a big gap. So, I mean, I'm not going to... You can make up your own mind there, why there's such a big gap. So...
Yeah. I think that is definitely telling, isn't it? But the one thing that I would say to not necessarily contradict, but to add to that in a different way is that when you talk to Stoke fans, you know, in the modern day, not many people know of Frank Sue, and there are people that you can speak to all over the world that are football fans. But Stoke fans have a real love, and I'm sure any Stoke fans listening would say the same. They have a real love for Frank Sue and really appreciate who he was. And I actually think that if the war hadn't broken out, I think he would have. And like Susan says, unfortunately, when he was due to be called up, he had an injury, and that was one of those really unfortunate things. I do believe that the way his career was going with Stoke and how popular he was becoming, he was a household name. You know, people knew who Frank Sue was, and he was really setting. I think he was starting to tear up the football scene back in the 30s, and so unfortunately, it just happened that the war broke out, and then things went the way they did.
I think that's one of the questions that we probably can't answer because there's not like a secret dossier somewhere saying that. So it's very hard for us to answer because there's no real evidence of either way, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to think that he would have, because that would have been amazing. But yeah, I don't think we can answer that question.
No. Any other questions, please? Yes.
Do you feel that the composition of